Right, so on to learning goal number 4. I can generate and extend numerical patterns and identify relationships of terms. Woo! Long learning goal, but hopefully it'll make sense after we go through this vocab. So the first vocab that we want you to write down also hopefully will help you understand this learning goal. So numerical patterns, first of all, is sequence of numbers that share a relationship. And the one other word that we want you to focus on is the word term. And what that just means is that's each number in that pattern. If you need to pause this a moment, feel free, because we are going to move to a different page here.
Yep. Okay, so we are going to use the old practice book, only you don't have one of these. So you are going to be writing down the numbers that we write down. You do not need to write down every single word in here. That would be kind of ridiculous. So you are going to be filling in what we fill in here. Okay, so these are the patterns. We're going to be looking for the patterns and the relationships between different sets of numbers. So the first clue here is to write the first 5 terms of a pattern that begins with 2 and then adds 2. So if it says it begins with 2, I'm automatically going to put, but 2 is my first digit. Then each time I'm adding 2. So 2 plus 2 is 4, 4 plus 2 is 6, 6 plus 2 is 8, and so on. So each time that we move up, we're adding 2. So that's the first part. Easy enough. Second part, write the first 5 terms of a pattern that begins with 4, then adds 4. So it begins with 4, so now every jump I make is going to be adding 4. So 4 plus 4 is 8, 8 plus 4 is 12, 16, 20. Okay, so those are relatively simple, trying to figure out those pretty easy patterns. Now comes where we try and figure out the relationship between them. So again, you don't have to write all this down, but you are going to do what we do up here with the circling, and then you're going to write the comparison down, because you'll need to know how to do that. So it says, circle the corresponding pairs circle the corresponding pairs of terms in the patterns. How does each term on the top pattern compare to the corresponding term in the bottom? So what I'm doing when it says circle the corresponding pairs is I'm circling the top one that corresponds with the bottom one. So I'm going to go through and do that part first. So now I'm going to be comparing these pairs. So the question is, how does the term in the top compare to the bottom? So I'm looking, how would I get from here to here? Or here to here, or here to here. What is that pattern? So in this one, to get from 2 to 4, well, I could say add 2, but that doesn't work here. 4 plus 2 is not 6. It's not 8. It's 6. So that's not it. Right? This time, it's times 2. So let's see, how does each term compare? And the top compare to the bottom. So the top is half the bottom. So if it's times 2 to go down, it would be divided by 2, or half of it to go up. And then D, as you can see, how does the bottom term compare to the top? So now I'm comparing the bottom to the top. So the bottom is 2 times as much, or twice as much as the top. So the bottom is twice the top, or 2 times the top. So you do need to have this part written in, and you do need to have these parts written in on your journal. Okay? And then the next one is a pause and try it. So we try and zoom in.
Oh, sure. So take a moment, pause, and try this, and then we will go over the answers.
You should try and do A, B, C, and D.
Yes. Yep. All right, so the first 5 terms of a pattern that begins with 9, and then you add 9 each time. So what you should have come up with is starting with 9 here. Then we are going to add 9 here and get 18. Add 9 again and we get 27. Add 9 again and we get 36. And then 45. So looking here for the bottom term, it says write the first 5 terms of a pattern that begins with 3. So we're going to begin with 3 and then add 3 more each time. So I'm starting with 3 this time and adding 3 more to get 6, and then 9, and then 12, and then 15. So you should have had these numbers also. And then, same as before, we just had to circle the pairs of the terms in the pattern. So I'm just circling these so we can look at those. And when I look here, we have to first think about, now that I've circled them, how does each term in the top pattern compare to the bottom pattern? So looking here, I'm going to notice that this is much bigger than here. We have to think about, well, how many times bigger? So I know, looking here and looking at this next one, making sure that they all go along together, that the top term, let's see, that's the question. How does each term in the top pattern, the top is 3 times bigger than the bottom. And hopefully that's what you came up with as well. For the bottom then, it's just flip-flopped basically. So now we just want to think about here the bottom term. So the bottom is actually 3 divided by the top.
1/3 of?
Yeah, that would be another way to say it. 1/3. All right. So hopefully you had something similar, and if you didn't, hopefully now you can see why this would be correct. There might be other ways to word it too.
Right.
Just make sure that you're coming up with the same idea.
Yep.
All right.
And then, do you want to?
Oh yes, I'm sorry. So now you want to try one on your own. So you're going to label this number 1 in your notebook, and you are going to write the first 5 terms of 2 different patterns. So you can come up with your own, but then you also just want to make sure that you are describing what that relationship is between those corresponding terms.
So try and think carefully about what you want to have, because you're going to need to be able to find some sort of relationship between the top and the bottom and the bottom and the top. So if you pick some weird obscure number, it's not going to work very well.
It would be a lot harder. Yes.
Okay, so pause that and get that done, label it number 1, and then we're going to, the last 2 real quick are using what we just talked about for real world situations. So in this case, this is going to be a pause and try it, but I wanted just to have you look at this. This is just like the numbers that we wrote before. In this case, we're talking about overdue library books, which has happened to all of us. So the number of days late corresponds to how much the fee is. So this is just like that pattern before. So your job is to pause and try this. You need to finish filling in the chart, and you need to actually write the chart out. So real quick, I'll show you kind of what it would look like if you were writing your own. I would just quickly jot down what it said. I even abbreviated it. It's fine. It took me like 30 seconds to write that. So write that down. Fill this in, and then describe the relationship. And then come back and I will go over it with you. Okay, so for the first part, I need to figure out how do I get from the top to the bottom, right? So 1 to 15, the library books are 1 day late, you owe 15 cents. 2 days late, you owe 30 cents. So each time I'm adding 15 cents from here to here to here. Okay, so if it's 3 days late, I would have to add 15 more cents. So it would become 45 cents. 4 days late, I would have to add 50 more cents, so 60 cents, and then 75 cents. So hopefully you have that filled in the same. Now we need to figure out the relationship between the terms. So I need to figure out how does the top compare to the bottom. So I would say the late fee is 15 times the number of days late. So if I had a book that was like 20 days late, rather than filling this whole chart out, I could do 20 times 15, and I would be able to figure out how much it was, number of days late. And then the last thing, is this you or me, Mrs. India?
I think me.
Okay.
I'll just mention that. So now we just want you to try one more on your own, and now you'll notice it's a little bit different just because you have to complete this table. Once again, it can be nice and short and sweet, but you want to look at if you bought tickets, how much would it cost? Here they already give you for 2 tickets and for 3. You have to figure out how much it would cost to just buy 1 ticket and 4 and 5.